No, not good, not good at all. Very bad, very bad. Because he knows me so well, he always knows how to push the right button for me to be able to react and do.
Hollywood's golden age. It conjures up images of pure glamour, of larger-than-life movie stars who seem to exist on another plane entirely. Their romances were epic, their tragedies profound, and their on-screen chemistry was legendary. But what happens when that chemistry is a total lie? What happens when the passionate embrace you see on the silver screen is hiding a reality of bitter resentment and ice-cold hostility? For decades, one of Hollywood's most intense feuds was carefully hidden from the public. It involved two of the biggest stars the world has ever known, forced to play epic lovers while, in truth, they could barely stand to be in the same room. Sophia Loren. The name itself is a masterpiece, a symbol of breathtaking Italian beauty, smoldering sensuality, and cinematic grace. For over 70 years, she's been an undisputed queen of the film world, an icon of elegance and strength. But behind her dazzling career lies a story she has rarely spoken of. A dream role in one of history's greatest epics that turned into a living nightmare. While Lauren herself has remained diplomatic over the years, the other side of this story, meticulously recorded in private diaries and confirmed by eyewitnesses, reveals a toxic on-set war that has remained hidden in the shadows of Hollywood history until now. To get the sheer scale of this story, you first have to understand the woman at its center. Sophia Loren wasn't just an actress. She was, and is, a phenomenon. Born Sophia Villani Ciccolone in Rome in 1934, her beginnings were anything but glamorous. She grew up in the poverty-stricken, war-torn city of Pozzuoli during World War II, a universe away from the spotlights of Hollywood. Taunted for being painfully thin, her nickname was Stecchino, or toothpick. She knew hunger as a constant companion. But inside this girl was a core of pure steel and a burning ambition to claw her way to a better life. Her mother, a frustrated actress herself, saw that spark and entered her into a beauty pageant at 14. Sophia didn't win, but she got noticed. This led to tiny roles in Italian cinema, bit parts that slowly started to build her profile. But Sophia was never going to be just a pretty face. She was fiercely intelligent and a sharp negotiator, guided by the man who would become her husband and lifelong champion, producer Carlo Ponti. She learned English, honed her craft, and developed a screen presence that was simply impossible to ignore. She was somehow earthy and elegant, vulnerable and formidable all at once. By the late 1950s, she wasn't just an Italian star, she was a global sensation. Hollywood came knocking, and she signed a multi-picture deal with Paramount, starring opposite the biggest leading men of the day, Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra, and John Wayne. She was a force of nature, a woman who had fought for everything she had and understood her own value completely. She expected respect and was known for being professional but also assertive. She knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to make demands. In a male-dominated industry, she was an unapologetic powerhouse. And it was this very strength, the self-possession that carried her from the rubble of Pozzuoli to the peak of Hollywood, that would soon put her on a collision course with a man who was her polar opposite. A man who saw her confidence not as a strength, but as a sin. If Sophia Loren was the embodiment of fiery European passion, then Charlton Heston was the human personification of stoic American granite. Born in a small Illinois town, Heston was cut from a different cloth entirely. A man of discipline and rigid principles, he was shaped by his service in the Army Air Forces during World War II. He was a towering physical presence, standing a commanding 6'3" with a chiseled jaw and a booming voice that seemed destined to deliver commandments from a mountaintop. And, well, it often did. By 1960, Charlton Heston was arguably the biggest movie star in the world, was the undisputed king of the historical epic. He'd parted the Red Sea as Moses in the Ten Commandments and won the Best Actor Oscar for Ben-Hur. His screen persona was one of unimpeachable integrity, of heroic men who shaped history through sheer force of will. He was a man's man, a symbol of rugged, old-fashioned masculinity. Behind the scenes, Heston's personality was a mirror of his on-screen roles. He was the consummate professional, known for his punctuality, meticulous preparation, and unwavering work ethic. He saw filmmaking as a serious craft, a job to be done with military precision. He had little patience for what he saw as the frivolous side of Hollywood, the egos, the drama, the diva behavior. He was a man who respected structure, order, and authority. By his own admission, he wasn't always easy to work with. He had a reputation for being serious, sometimes humorless, and holding firm opinions on everything. He was a force of nature in his own right, an immovable object of tradition, and on the sun-drenched plains of Spain, this immovable object was about to meet an unstoppable force. The year was 1961. The project was El Cid, a film of staggering ambition. Producer Samuel Bronston was determined to create one of the most spectacular epics ever made. The film would tell the story of the 11th century nobleman Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, or El Cid, who fought to unite Spain. It was a tale of sweeping battles, political intrigue, and at its core, a legendary love story between El Cid and his wife, Shemaine. With his Oscar for Ben-Hur still gleaming, Charlton Heston was the only choice to play the hero. To play the fiery, passionate Shemaine, the producers needed an actress with equal star power, someone who could hold her own against Heston's monumental presence. They needed Sophia Loren, but getting her came at a cost. Due to a packed schedule, she was only available for a limited time, requiring the entire production to be structured around her. The studio reportedly agreed to pay her a then-staggering salary for her time. Some claimed it was $1 million, putting her in the same elite tier as Elizabeth Taylor. She was also given perks like a weekly stipend of $200 just for her personal hairdresser. These were the kinds of demands that Heston, a man who saw his work with a blue-collar practicality, found excessive. The battle lines were being drawn before a single frame of film was shot. The stage was set across the vast landscapes of Spain, with thousands of extras and authentic medieval castles. The pressure was enormous, and at the center of it all were two superstars whose personalities were about to clash with the force of a medieval broadsword. The trouble started almost immediately. Just 2 days before cameras were set to roll, Sophia Loren, exercising her star power, demanded major changes to the script. She felt her character, Shemaine, needed more depth and that the romance needed to be amplified. She even brought in her own writers and translators to rework her dialogue, first into Italian and then back into an English she felt was more suitable. To Lauren, this was just an artist taking control of her performance. To Charlton Heston, it was an act of profound disrespect. It was a flagrant disregard for the writers and the entire production schedule. He was a man who valued preparation above all else. Last-minute rewrites were the antithesis of everything he stood for. His anger, meticulously recorded in the private diaries he kept his whole life, began to simmer. The conflict was stark. Heston saw the script as a blueprint. Loren saw it as a foundation to build on. According to producer Peter Snell, Loren's diva antics, as he called them, really got him angry. This wasn't just about a few lines. It was a fundamental disagreement about power on a movie set. Heston, the Oscar-winning lead, felt his authority was being challenged. His son, Fraser Heston, later confirmed his father was infuriated by Lauren's successful push to make her part larger. What began as professional friction was quickly curdling into personal animosity. On a film set, time is money, momentum, and morale. For a production the size of El Cid, every minute was precious. and it was on the battlefield of the daily call sheet that the Cold War between Heston and Loren turned hot. Charlton Heston was a man of military discipline. Punctuality was a moral imperative. He was always the first to arrive, a general leading by example. Sophia Loren, however, operated on a different clock. Her preparation was an elaborate ritual, often spending hours in makeup and hair, which frequently brought the entire production to a halt. For Heston, this was an unforgivable sin. He and hundreds of others would be left waiting, often in full, heavy armor under the scorching sun, while Lauren was being perfected. The tension became unbearable. One day, Lauren reportedly requested a sudden costume change, a whim that caused a delay costing the production a reported $50,000. But for Heston, the breaking point came on December 3, 1960. Sophia Loren arrived on set nearly 4 hours late. Heston had been waiting, fuming, in his constricting armor. In his private diary, he recorded his fury, noting her chronic lateness was downright disrespectful to everyone involved in this production. It was a clash of two worlds, and the resentment building inside him was now cementing into something harder and colder. The animosity between the two stars was no longer a secret. It started to bleed into the work itself. Their characters were supposed to be swept up in a great romance, but the actors could barely look at each other. Director Anthony Mann struggled to capture any passion, but Heston's body language screamed his discomfort. Critics and audiences even noticed, with one reviewer remarking that Miss Lauren and Heston spend most of the picture simply glaring at each other. Heston actively avoided eye contact with Lauren during their love scenes. In the climactic deathbed scene, he later bizarrely claimed that instead of looking into the eyes of his on-screen wife, he was looking into the future, a transparent excuse for his inability to feign affection. The tension was heightened by a famously peculiar complaint from Heston. Sophia Loren, being proudly Italian, enjoyed her native cuisine, often eating garlic-rich meals on set. Heston began to complain about her breath, insisting the smell made filming close-ups unbearable. This finally culminated in an act of open hostility. On April 7, 1961, during a key love scene, Heston outright refused to work directly with Loren, demanding a stand-in for any shot that focused only on her. She was reportedly unaware for weeks until she arrived on set to find another man dressed in Heston's costume. She was furious. The Spanish press got wind of the story, running a headline that read, "American star refuses to face Italian beauty." The secret war was now a public humiliation. The on-set battles were over, but the war was far from finished. The feud was about to move from the film set to the courtroom. If you're finding this untold story of classic Hollywood fascinating, take a moment to subscribe and hit the like button. You won't want to miss the shocking conclusion to this legendary rivalry. When filming on El Cid wrapped in the spring of 1961, there was no emotional farewell. The conflict simply entered a new phase, moving from Spain to New York City, and the new battleground was a 600-square-foot billboard in Times Square. Sophia Loren's contract was ironclad. It stipulated she was to receive second star billing above the title, on the same line, same size, same prominence as that used for Charlton Heston. In Hollywood, billing is a direct measure of an actor's power. When the film's promotional signs went up, Heston's name appeared first, with Loren's below his. To Loren, this was an unacceptable public slight. She took immediate action, filing a lawsuit in the New York Supreme Court against the producer, Samuel Bronston, for breach of contract. The complaint stated, if the defendants are permitted to A. place deponent's name below that of Heston, then it will appear that deponent's status is considered to be inferior. While Heston wasn't the one being sued, his name was at the center of the fight. It was Loren's definitive statement. Though her motion for an injunction was ultimately denied, she had made her point with resounding clarity. In the war of egos, Sophia Loren made sure to fire the last shot. For Charlton Heston, the experience of making El Cid left a scar. He made a personal vow he would never, under any circumstances, work with Sophia Loren again. This was tested a few years later in 1964 when Heston was offered a lead role opposite Loren in the film Lady L. He flatly rejected it. His refusal wasn't diplomatic. According to Hollywood legend, he wrote a letter to his agent articulating the depth of his loathing with a phrase that has become infamous. The story goes that he would rather stick needles in my eyes than work with Loren again. There could be no more definitive statement. It was a visceral rejection that spoke volumes. He held a grudge with the same tenacity his characters held their principles. Loren, for her part, handled the hostility with more grace. When asked about their difficult relationship, she responded with carefully measured diplomacy. "Charlton is a fine actor, but our working styles are completely different. It was a masterclass in acknowledging conflict without descending into raw animosity. But Heston's sentiment was clear, and producers took note. The on-screen romance of Rodrigo and Shamin was destined to be a one-time event, an epic love story built on real-life hatred. The bitter feud became a defining part of both their legacies. For Loren, it stood as a powerful example of her refusal to be intimidated in a male-dominated industry. While Heston may have seen a diva, many others saw a trailblazer, a powerful woman who fought for and commanded respect. For Heston, the feud with Loren was perhaps the most intense. But it wasn't his only difficult on-set relationship. His rigid professionalism often led to friction. He famously clashed with Ava Gardner and held a lifelong disdain for Marlon Brando. His conflict with Loren can be seen as the ultimate clash of his worldview. She represented everything he resisted. A more European, emotive, and flexible approach to filmmaking that stood in stark contrast to his own disciplined, militaristic code. She was assertive where he expected deference. In his eyes, she was the embodiment of the star ego he so despised. They never reconciled. For decades, they moved in the same Hollywood circles, yet remained worlds apart. Their feud became a cautionary tale of how two monumental talents, two colossal egos, and two incompatible philosophies could collide to create a masterpiece on screen, all while waging a bitter personal war behind it. In the grand story of Hollywood, the feud between Sophia Loren and Charlton Heston is more than just a footnote. It's a powerful drama about a clash of titans, a collision of two different worlds. On one side, the disciplined, stoic American icon. On the other, the passionate, fiery Italian queen. The film they created, El Cid, remains an epic masterpiece. The fact that they could conjure a believable romance while harboring such intense personal animosity is perhaps the greatest performance of their careers. Their story is a stark reminder that the magic of cinema is often an illusion, crafted through gritted teeth and veiled contempt. The passionate gazes can be empty, the loving embraces a chore, and the on-screen chemistry can be a brilliant, beautiful lie. It serves as a lingering, fascinating question. When we watch these legends on screen, are we seeing a reflection of their true selves, or are we simply witnessing the ghosts of battles fought long after the director yelled "cut"?